Today on Locked On Rockies, reports about who might be on the move and what the Rockies are looking for are out. How active will the Colorado Rockies be at the trade deadline? And what will it mean for the team going forward?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 7th day of July in the year 2023. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, you are in the right spot because that's what we do around here each and every day. And proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find us on SiriusXM, the SiriusXM app, by just searching Locked On Rockies and getting all your play-by-play action of the Colorado Rockies on SiriusXM. Just search Rockies, Colorado Rockies. You'll be taken where you need to go. Hey, you can be part of the show. You can join in on the conversation. Subscribe to the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel so you know when we go live. And if the show's live streamed, you can post your hot takes and questions in the Locked On Rockies live chat here. And if we got time, we'll get to them. We always usually do get to talking to the fans here. Today on the pod, we're going to talk trades. Lots of trades for the Rockies, especially if you've been following. There's a lot of good pieces, a really, really good piece in the Denver Post we're going to talk about from Patrick Saunders that gives you a nice long conversation with Bill Schmidt, and as well as a look at some of the people that might be on the move. We also, I got Renee Deckhart's response as well to who she thinks might be on the move for the Rockies. And Purple Rose got some great coverage on the home runs. That'll give a little bit more numbers and data to a conversation we've been having, especially over the past couple of weeks, about home runs and the importance of home runs for the Rockies and the lack of production there. Before we dive into everything, though, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So here's the big picture, basically. As the Rockies are approaching the trade deadline, there's simply going to be multiple storylines. And the biggest thing I think you can take away from Patrick Saunders' piece is also, I read the quotes and some of them are encouraging, I guess, but and he also puts a sort of a reality check on things when you're talking about teams have to be interested in Rockies players, and there's not a lot of standout, breakout Rockies studs at the moment. I think Elias Diaz is the exception right there of players and veterans that could be moved. But Schmidt mentions the bullpen and solid relievers. And really, if this is the best course of action, then the Rockies have to take it. I unfortunately, I think the best case for the Rockies would be to keep some of this veteran presence in the bullpen and some of the solid veteran arms in the bullpen. But I mean, if it's all the relievers that are generating the most interest, I think you have to make those moves. The biggest thing I think the Rockies have to make a series of moves. I don't think that you're going to be satisfied or really make the changes in the progress that you need as the Rockies if you only sit back and make one move. I mean, just the Mike Moustakas trade is exactly kind of what you're looking for here. And I believe Saunders mentions this in his piece here when he's talking about what the Rockies are looking for here. And again, Denver Post, Patrick Saunders, Rockies, Bill Schmidt, relievers trade deadline, relievers. Here, hold on. Let me get the proper headline. Rockies, Bill Schmidt, relievers most likely trade pieces, but club will take offers on position players. And this is again, reading from that real quick here. Because this was an interesting point here about getting pitching depth and the type of trade the Rockies are looking for. Ideally, Colorado would like to pull off a trade similar to the one it made with Tampa Bay in January 2016 when it received right-hander German Marquez, a high A prospect at the time, and lefty reliever Jake McGee in exchange for big league outfielder Corey Dickerson and infield prospect Kevin Padlo. So, the Rockies are going to be simply in a place where they need to go out and make multiple moves and do something about addressing all of their needs. And if the relievers are going to be the best option, that's especially if there is interest in Pierce Johnson. I mean, there is I don't necessarily know how much the interest is going to be there, but I keep seeing his name pop up and come up into conversations, and I don't necessarily know what the Rockies are. I don't necessarily know how much Pierce Johnson's going to be, but as unfortunate as it is, Brad Hand and Brent Suter, if they're going to get you that double, a couple prospects back, or if you can package them with something else like, some of your other position players, then you can probably start, expecting a more realistic haul. I mean, as of right now, the Rockies' best bet on making a big splash in terms of a big trade, and I think the most players back would probably be Elias Diaz. If you're looking at realistic deals that the Rockies could make, you're not going to be able to trade Chris Bryant, you're not going to be able to trade Chris Bryant and do all sorts of that and get in the way of that contract. No one's going to take on those things. It's just not going to happen. I mean, it's just simply there's nothing Chris Bryant has done for your team that makes him more valuable. And on top of all of that, it's all of that money. I mean, the biggest issue and the best thing that you could hope for Chris Bryant was the fact that he hit for power, and no one's going to be interested in a right fielder that really just hits singles and is going to be injured for a month. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just, it's another highlight of how disappointing that trade, that sign and everything is going to be. I mean, it's unfortunate. And the best, if it would be a shame to see Elias Diaz go, but if Elias Diaz is going to get you the best haul, then you really have to consider it. How much? It's one more deal of Elias Diaz. It's one more year of Elias Diaz. And I don't know how much. I feel like catcher is kind of a tough position, to trade for, but just like CJ Cron, I think when you start looking at the packaging deals and looking at these, the best options, I think you're going to have to start comboing the two together. You're going to have, I think teams might be a little bit more interested in taking a CJ Cron or someone like that if you can put a Brad Hand or a Pierce Johnson in there. And it's just, I'm not certain that that's enough, or enough teams are really going to be interested in that to make those type of deals, especially, but if you, and it's how many, and what type of prospects can you really expect from these type of deals and from the Rockies players as of now? I mean, there's just no one that's really setting the league on fire. There's no one that's really doing anything to benefit. That's changing, raising eyebrows that are trade candidates for the Rockies here. So let's keep the conversation going. We will keep talking about some more of the ones and diving into some more of the coverage of the trades. I think the biggest question you have to ask yourself as we go to the deadline is, how valuable are the Rockies players truly in the trade market here? Take a look here at some of your questions and comments here in the live chat as well. And we'll be doing all of that coming up here in segment number 2. But before we do that, got to tell you about our friends at Gametime. Gametime's got you covered when you are looking for last-second deals, last-second tickets, and those last-second people are going to love Gametime. If you're like me, maybe you're not so sure if you want to go to the event, especially if it's a concert. Maybe you're not sure what the work schedule is going to be like. Maybe you just missed out on buying tickets when they were available. Gametime's got you covered. They got flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, everything you need a ticket for. They got you covered. And the best part about it, I think, is you get to see the image of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly where you're sitting. and you know what type of seats you're going to get. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We are free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, bringing you all your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, here on your favorite streaming service, live on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel and on Sirius XM and the Sirius XM app. Folks, you can chime in with your takes here. Lux Aces trade Pierce Johnson immediately. I mean, if you can, he had that strong start. That's what's I think really tough when you're analyzing and going with your Rockies relievers or Rockies bullpen pitchers is if this starting pitching depth still had the depth and still was able to get starts and still was able to not lean on this bullpen so much, who knows what we could have seen for these Rockies bullpen pieces. I mean, at one point, I know it was early, but there was at one point where they were a top 5 team in a bullpen team in all of baseball. But yeah, there's some teams. I mean, clearly with the reporting around the Rockies and the relievers, Pierce Johnson is someone that is generating interest here. Trevor Salzman says, time to wheel and deal. The Rockies need to cash in on Elias Diaz this season. The price will be high, but they need to capitalize if the market is there. I think people will be really interested in Elias Diaz here. I really do think so, but it's a matter of how much. I think the Rockies really like him and really like what he does for their clubhouse as well. The Rockies can't afford to sit on their hands this trade deadline. The last few trade deadlines have not helped the Rockies from farm system at all with lack of trades. Yeah, and I think that's on full display. I mean, we talked about it a bunch. It's this year you can't keep digging a deeper hole in terms of inactivity and pivoting away from some of these things. And yes, you do have exciting prospects, but will the Rockies move on from some prospects? That's what Renee Deckhart is proposing here. She says, you should go see the Rockies pitch newsletter here, but here is an interesting one. The Rockies will trade Alaris Montero, she says. The Rockies have not figured out how to unlock the power in Montero's swing, and he's blocked at first base in DH, a situation that is unlikely to change. I expect Montero to be packaged with another player, perhaps one of the relievers, to bring back a greater return. That can be exactly, that is the type of trade that you could be looking at. You could be watching for. I mean, and that's, if Montero gets traded, that raises the bigger questions. And to be totally honest, if that trade does happen, I'm hoping for some accountability from the front office to come up and talk honestly about what happened with Montero, what happened over the past couple of years, and what's happened in the post-Arenado and post-playoff era. Because if we know what Austin Gomber is capable of, or at least right now. I mean, maybe Austin Gomber, there's still time to change. There's still some stuff. We've gotten 3 seasons basically of Austin Gomber for the Rockies. Montero, if he's going to continue to be in limbo and he's going to continue to be in this and he's going to continue to be blocked, the future is really confusing about Montero. And if he and Pierce Johnson and he and Brad Hand are enough to get you a couple of solid pitching prospects, that I think you got to make that deal. I mean, and you have to reflect on what that means. Lux Aces, do you think they'll keep Tolia? I think they prefer Tolia over. I mean, Tolia has the defense at first base and these other capabilities. I mean, if Montero can't hit consistently, then what's he really doing for the Rockies? What's he really doing to help the team? And what were the Rockies really looking for with him? It is just, that's a really tough situation if Montero ends up being moved, because we all know the connections there, especially because one of the other prospect in that trade, if in the Arenado trade, you really don't get anything. I mean, You get a bullpen back into the rotation. Basically, if the Rockies trade Montero, which Montero, maybe, you can bring some people in and then you can start connecting those threads and things of that nature. But in the immediate aftermath of the Arenado trade, the Rockies got a back end rotation guy / bullpen arm with a high ERA and 2 prospects that didn't work out for the Rockies for Nolan Arenado. That's a massive issue. And then that's another thing when we're sitting here and saying, how much confidence can we have in the Rockies to make these deals? And how much confidence can we have in the Rockies to make the best deal possible? I mean, they're not trading Arenado anymore. You know what I mean? I mean, the Rockies big leverage, big name trade piece players are not there. They're gone. I mean, there's Elias. When Elias Diaz is your most enticing trade piece, that's a big issue. I mean, I think the best course of action for the Rockies, I think they really do need to make multiple moves, and they need to move on from some veterans that are not performing or aging, but how much can you really get? How much can you? It's that mix of really get guys, but I think there are teams that will be more interested in Rockies trades if the Rockies, it's a 2-team supplement. It's a Cronin hand. It's a Pearson hand. The Rockies might need to trade multiple players. CJ Cron he might not be doing amazing, but he's at least getting on base. He's back from the IL. If he has a solid stretch and that power returns for him, he might be interested to see what happens. And Luxay says, do you think we will keep Profar or Grichuk between the two? I think it's more likely that Profar stays because of his lack of production overall than Grichuk. I think Grichuk is someone that will be traded. I'm pretty confident in a Randall Grichuk trade. I think he's, again, someone you could maybe partner with the reliever. Grichuk is hitting the ball well. He plays serviceable defense, whereas Profar statistically is one of the worst defenders in baseball. He's not an elite defender. I'm not saying Randall Grichuk is either, but Grichuk isn't going to cost you too much. And Grichuk has also shown that he is still hitting the ball hard. He might not be hitting the home runs that the Rockies thought they were getting for in the trade, but Grichuk has performed enough where he certainly is someone I think the Rockies could get something traded for. And Renee Descartes, that's where, again, I think I really like Renee's piece because she can kind of go through it. I'm not going to read all of them here, but here's what she has to say about Randall Grichuk. He's never been quite the power hitter the Rockies had hoped for, but he seems to be coming around a bit, and he would be a good fit for a team looking for a 4th outfielder with some pop. In the last week, he's been playing better after getting off to a slow start, and Renee thinks the team will take a chance. So, yeah, again, I think the question and the conversation about the Rockies and their trade and who they trade and when it is going to come down to how some of these vets perform getting closer to the trade deadline. I think some teams might want to see a little bit more, might want to see a couple more at bats from CJ Cron. I think the Rockies, when they make their moves, it will be close to deadline time. They will wait and see and kind of, especially with bullpen. And if you're combining, I think the Rockies want to get as much out of this bullpen that has been, called upon a ton of late to help them out, and then make the moves at the deadline, especially if they can get a buildup of, these veteran guys doing more for the Rockies and performing better and boosting their stats. Because, if Grichuk and Cron and Profar, if they start to heat up a little bit more, that's going to help. I think one thing that might be really interesting for people when they're looking at a Profar is he is really efficient at getting on base. He might not be the best defender, and there are some other issues, but he does seem to get on base almost every night. So if teams are looking for someone that can start things off by just drawing a walk or getting on base, Profar is not a bad option there. And again, if the Rockies can just take high A flyers, then that's going to be okay, because I think that this trade deadline isn't going to help the Rockies in 24, maybe even 25, but 2026, if you're taking high A players, you could be setting yourself up for something nice, especially if you are able to find another German Marquez in some of these trades. I mean, like we said, right after that trade there for Moustakas, we had a nice the performance there from that prospect. So I'll be curious to see. But I think the Rockies will trade multiple people, and I think they will trade in a lot of kind of combo package deals. And I don't think the Rockies are going to get necessarily, no big flashy name players are going to come in return and things of that nature. And I don't think the Rockies would do something like a trade of Chris Bryant and eat some of that contract for someone. And I don't think the Rockies really move on from some of a player like Charlie Blackmon. I think the injury is too much there. And I think he's just, I don't know, but just in case here from Patrick Saunders here, if something came up, I would sit down with Charlie and talk to him about it. Bill Schmidt said he's meant a lot to this franchise. He deserves that kind of respect. Schmidt added that even if Blackmon were traded or became a free agent, the Rockies would consider bringing him back next season if he wants to continue playing. For the right place, I would love to have him come back here. I think the idea of having him playing in one spot for his whole career, there's something to that. I think it's special. There's a lot more here, but we talked about them. So here, I'll read from Patrick Saunders just to close here on Crone, Grichuk, and Profar. One National League executive said there's mild interest in Crone at best because he came off the injured list after missing 39 games because of back spasms and also because Crone hit just 197 in the second half of last season. But Crone has looked good at the plate since returning from the IL, getting a hit in 6 of 7 games, including a homer on Wednesday at Houston. Plus, the Rockies would like to see more of Alaris Montero at first base and also call up Michael Toglia from AAA for another look this season. So a Crone trade is not out of the question. While Grichuk has not supplied the power the Rockies were hoping for, he's flashed some lately. He missed the first month recovering from sports hernia surgery, but he's slashing 289, 353, 443, and he's hit 3 homers in his last 11 games. A Profar trade seems unlikely, especially since he's making $7.75 million this season on a 1-year deal. The switch-hitting left fielder is slashing just 246, 328, 382, with 6 home runs and 32 RBIs over 345 plate appearances. So there you go, kind of some more inside look of what the front office is thinking about there. So yeah, I think Profar is going to be the toughest one to keep. And if the Rockies are, if Chuck wants to say, great. I mean, I think he should retire a Rocky, sure. But again, you really have to asking yourselves when you want to commit to the future. All right, so go read Bill Schmidt there. Bill Schmidt's comments there in the Denver Post. Make sure that you go check out all of Patrick Saunders' work there. And if you subscribe to the Rockies Pitch newsletter as well, you'll be able to talk. You can get more from Renee Deckhart on the trade deadline and more on that. So I want to just read a little bit more from Purple Row to close out the show on the home run issues, trying to give you guys some more numbers here from a topic that has been pretty dominant conversation for us here on the pod of late. Let's do that coming up in segment number 3. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. We're also live on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where we got our everydayers like Trevor Salzman and Lux Ace hanging out, firing off their Rockies hot takes. Like, honestly, I say keep Nolan Jones at first base. He made an amazing play in Houston. I think Nolan Jones. I think we're going to be talking a lot about Nolan Jones at the end of the year. I think that is something we'll have to see. Salzman says, I just wonder how much value Montero has on the trade market. He hasn't played well so far for some team who would like to bank on his potential. Hey, a team could unlock his bat, and that could be big for them. FNL Aviator says, if I was the front office, I'd keep Blackmon and maybe Marquez, but I'd send everyone out. Everyone would be on the block to be traded. Be tough to. I would not trade Ezekiel Tovar. I would not trade Nolan Jones. I would not trade Kyle Freeland. I would not trade Charlie Blackmon. I mean, there's just some. I think there's some pieces that you keep of your veteran presence, but there's. I would trade Chris Bryant if we could. I really would. I think Chris Bryant in this. I don't know. We need a big second half of the season from Chris Bryant for me to have more. My confidence in Chris Bryant, the dominant player, is at an all-time low. Chris Bryant as someone who can contribute to the Rockies is something I'm not ruling out. But speaking of Chris Bryant, speaking of issues here, let's read from Purple Row. Joel Milholm writes, Rockies have double whammy homer problems here. So far this season, the Rockies have given up the most homers in Major League Baseball at 131, or 1.59 per game, one about every 23 at-bats. That's significantly more than the Cubs, who have given up the fewest home runs at 83 at 0.97 per game. Coors Field isn't the major factor either, because the Rockies have actually given up more home runs on the road with 67 than at home with 64. Instead of neutralizing homer barrages with their own bombs, the Rockies are 27th in Major League Baseball with 78 home runs, which equals 0.89 home runs per game. Atlanta is the best in Major League Baseball at 1.93 homers per game with a total of 166. Every other team in NL West has at least 1.17 homers per game, and the Dodgers are number 2 in Major League Baseball at 1.59. Not the Rockies. They're averaging hitting 1 homer per 38.14 at-bats. The Rockies have never played a season where both homers hit and homers given up rank so poorly at the same time. The Rockies have had other situations. Last year, they finished the season 22nd in Major League Baseball in home runs hit and tied for 21st in home runs allowed. That was in 2022. 2021, they were tied for 21st in home runs hit, tied for 15th in home runs allowed. The last time the Rockies were in the top 15 in both was 2018 in terms of hitting home runs and not allowing them. And surprisingly enough, they were 21st in the league at hitting home runs when they made the postseason in 2017, or 8th and 9th in baseball there. So as we've highlighted, this is just the lack of power is continuing to cost the Rockies. And one last take, a bit of numbers here from that. Even worse, the Rockies don't often make their homers count in terms of total run production. This season, the Rockies' 78 homers have accounted for 118 of their 385 runs, or 30.6% of their run production. The Braves use homers to make up 56.7% of their runs. The Dodgers score 50.6% of their runs on homers. The inability to hit homers with men on base is severely limiting the Rockies' run scoring capabilities. When we're talking about the differences between the Rockies and San Francisco, the Rockies and the NL West, there's the big emphasis of this when we're comparing it, and especially as the Rockies head in to play San Francisco, was those numbers with the NL West. And again, you can read more about the Rockies and dive into deeper the numbers there. Purple Row. Rockies have double whammy homer problems by Joel Milholm. And again, every other team in the NL West has at least 1.17 homers per game compared to the Rockies' 0.89. That's the major difference. The home run history, the offensive powerhouse, the long ball lore of the Colorado Rockies has been missing, and it is drastically missed because this team needs to hit more home runs. It needs to hit more effective home runs as well. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for being an everyday listener. We had a great we got all of you here tuning into the live show. Got some great takes about the trade deadline and everything like that. And more fired up Rockies fans here. Will the Rockies trade Ryan McMahon? I don't think so. We didn't talk a lot about him, but I think the Rockies really like him. And again, we'll see if it happens. But you can let us know who you think the Rockies should trade in the comments. You can be part of the show by subscribing to Locked On Rockies on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite streaming service and on SiriusXM, where you can find us and all your play-by-play commentary, I should say, on the SiriusXM app there. Just search Locked On Rockies or Colorado Rockies, and you can check out all the action there. Go make Locked On Buffs, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and the Locked On Broncos your second listen of the day for more Colorado sports coverage. Folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.